Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Cyberpunk Edgerunners. No, there's not a new season. We're just catching up because there's a lot of Cyberpunk stuff going on, and it made me want to watch it again, and Will hadn't seen it yet. So we said, hey, opportunity. Let's watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners and talk about it on the show. So I went and I rewatched it, and Will watched it. But before that, we have some other segments to get through. We're going to start things off with On the Horizon.
On the horizon.
On the Horizon is, of course, the segment where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. There's only a few things really notable coming up to talk about this week. On Thursday, October 12th, Doom Patrol is returning on Max. That's formerly HBO Max. The Fall of the House.
Last season, right?
I think so, yeah. I can't imagine them continuing on. They're resetting all the DC stuff.
Right, yeah, I heard it was the last season.
And then also on the same day, The Fall of the House of Usher is coming to Netflix. This is the last of the Netflix Mike Flanagan series. Can't remember where he went to. I think he went to Amazon or something, but.
I think that's correct.
But he's not at Netflix anymore, so this is the last thing he had in development at Netflix. But that is coming on Thursday, October 12th, of course, based on the Edgar Allan Poe story. Fraiser is coming back on Thursday, October 12th.
Tossed salad and scrambled eggs is coming back.
Yeah, I have no interest in that. I just think it's crazy to mention.
Yeah, it's
Fraiser is coming back.
Confession, I've never watched Cheers. I've never watched Fraiser.
I've just seen a few episodes here and there of both.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I definitely don't care about the show, but
right.
I just think it's really funny that it's coming back at this time, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then lastly, on Friday, October 13th, Goosebumps is coming to Disney Plus and Hulu. This is a new thing we've been seeing where they've been some shows that are coming to both Disney Plus and Hulu. We're getting that also with, I think it's Werewolf by Night, which already came out on Disney Plus last year, and now you can watch it on both Disney Plus and Hulu if you want to watch it this season, but only for this season, and then it's going away. So it's kind of a new thing of putting things on multiple streamers if you have a company like Disney that owns multiple streamers, you know?
Right, yeah.
It's similar to what we have with Chucky, for example, being on, I think it's on USA, Sci-Fi, and Peacock, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. And also I think it's that eventually Disney's gonna merge Hulu into Disney Plus. I feel like that's gonna happen sooner or later.
Yeah, they've been putting more mature content on Disney Plus. It's kind of surprising. Like the Marvel Netflix shows, for example, that you wouldn't think would ever be on Disney Plus, but they are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see them doing that as they continue to push past making everything on Disney Plus kid friendly. They could just push everything to Disney Plus.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is it for our On the Horizon segment. Next up, we have On Beat. On Beat. On Beat is our news segment, and this week we've got quite a few trailers, 7 trailers to go over that have come out this last week. So let's kick things off with the one that kind of probably surprised me the most. I kind of vaguely heard about this, but then forgot about it, and then the trailer came out, and it was like, what? The Toxic Avenger?
Oh yeah, the remake of the Toxic Avenger, starring Peter Dinklage as Toxie.
Yeah, and also quite a few other notable cast members. Elijah Wood, for example, is in it. What's your history with trauma in general? Have you ever watched a trauma film?
No, I've never watched a trauma film. I know of this movie because, like, I remember seeing it in the video store and seeing, like, the box art, but I've never watched it. I don't think it's the type of movie. Like, my mom was, like, pretty liberal about what I was allowed to watch, like, mostly as long as I didn't like see the sex scenes in things. So my mom was pretty liberal, but like probably like that would be too extreme for me to have seen when I was a kid. But there was a cartoon and there were action figures and there was a video game, and I'm probably more familiar with that stuff than the actual film, to be honest.
There was a point in my life, like right around, I think, late high school or after high school, like right around that time, where I was watching a lot of Troma stuff because a bunch of my friends and I were like into it, and we would like collectively buy stuff. So like one person would buy one movie, another person would buy another one, another person would buy another one, so that we were building up like a collective collection that we could watch together, but it was separate amongst us. We did the same thing with a lot of like anime in the early anime days, you know? But we were into Troma for a while, and I got into Troma because of USA Up All Night.
Oh, they
used to play a lot of Troma movies on USA Up All Night.
If that's the case, I probably saw something like from that.
The really bad ones, like Surf Nazis Must Die.
Yeah, I probably saw that, like, but for the life of me, I can't remember. Like, mostly anything I watched on that. Like, I remember the Bikini Car Wash Company. I made sure to tune in for that one.
The straight up sexploitation stuff wasn't Troma. Troma was more like really violent, weird stuff.
That's probably like the only like specific title of a movie that aired on that like I could remember off the top of my head though.
But yeah, like there's a certain, if you were like around at a certain time and you were into like, say, horror films, you know, there's like this pop culture icon status of like Lloyd Kaufman, who's like the creator of Troma and the director of the original Toxic Avenger and a bunch of the Toxic Avenger stuff. And there's like a real dedicated fan base to it. It's very kind of like got a punk rock attitude.
Yeah.
It's very like, you know, we don't do the Hollywood system. We do our own thing. Fuck everybody else, you know? We don't need a concise story. We're just gonna put in a bunch of fucking slime and gore. Like, you know, and then they just do like weird shit and they just go for it and they don't care. And it's that like don't give a fuck attitude that like was like a big part of being into Troma at that kind of time. And
they were just doing what they wanted to do and they weren't like out to impress anybody.
Yeah, and I don't think there's like too much going on now with like Troma fan base and stuff. Like you still hear stuff every so often, but I remember like I going to Comic-Con and running into like, you know, there were like two people from Troma there, like all decked out in costume, but they weren't just like cosplayers hired to like promote a booth. These were like people from Troma because they were very small and anything they did, like it was all hands on deck, you know? So if they were going to promote, like it would be directors and writers wearing the cosplay doing those things. And Troma, it's just such a weird thing, and it's so crazy to see so many big names attached to a remake of a Troma film, and to see that it very much still looks like a Troma film from the trailer, which is exciting as well. James Gunn started off in Troma.
Yeah, James Gunn.
He did Romeo and Juliet, which is a movie I've watched. I had a copy of that.
I'm not surprised, like, the studio kind of, like, fits James Gunn's sensibilities.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good, like, foundation for him.
He loves the weird shit, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of, there's a similar thing also with, like, Roger Corman with Troma.
Yeah,
like, Roger Corman is a similar phenomenon where it's like.
Legendary B-movie auteur.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen, like, some of his stuff, you know, like, he did, like, the original Little Shop of Horrors, which was like one of the first roles Jack Nicholson had, actually. And stuff like that. And also, like, James Cameron got his start doing Piranha for, you know, Corman. Roger Corman.
Well, that's exactly like what I mean. Like, it's similar to Troma in that sense. So it's like you got James Cameron, and then Troma, you got James Gunn.
Yeah.
So if your name is James, and you're a future auteur.
Yeah. You got your start under, like, a B-movie auteur, I guess. Yeah.
That next movie we got a trailer for, we got like two. We got like a teaser and a trailer was Argylle, which is our next dose of Henry Cavill, and it's Matthew Vaughn's next movie.
It's Matthew Vaughn's next movie. It's got quite the twist. It's funny because I'm sure the trailer doesn't give away all the surprises of the film, but it gives away, like, the meta element that, like, marketing was teasing recently, because Bryce Dallas Howard's character, Ellie Conway, like, and I will just state this for everybody, I don't care. The premise of the film seems to be that she is a novelist. She writes spy novels, and whatever she writes seems to come true. Like she has like some kind of prescient, like psychic ability that she's unaware of. That's
something of that sort, yeah.
That's the thing. But before this trailer dropped, the marketing team for the film were trying to build this narrative that her character, Ellie Conway, is a real person, and that Argylle was a real novel, and that Argylle is like a real novel, and it was like her first novel she ever written, and it was going to come out soon. It's not out yet. It's coming soon, but it was like so brilliant that Matthew Vaughn read it and immediately like had to adapt it into a screenplay, into a film, because Matthew Vaughn said it was the most brilliant spy novel he ever read, and couldn't believe that it was from a first-time novelist. And like there was this whole article where like they were like trying to figure out who Ellie Conway was, and they were like knowing, oh, she has like an Instagram page, but like there's like no pictures of her anywhere, and it seems to be like it doesn't even really have any followers. Like they said, like one of the only followers like her Instagram page seems to have is like a Bryce Dallas Howard fan club account. And the author of like the article for, I think it was the Hollywood Reporter, so there was a lot of stuff about how they couldn't find like any information or details on who this Ellie Conway person was who wrote this brilliant novel. And the trailer just gave that away. So the trailer kind of like just threw cold water on that marketing conceit, or maybe they just like got bored of it or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, they gave up the goose.
They gave up the goose. But I don't think that's the only big surprise. I think like watching this trailer, like it's fun. It's fun. Like
it's a Matthew Vaughn spy movie. That's kind of all you really need to know.
And it's a meta narrative. You have Henry Cavill and Dua Lipa and John Cena, like assumably fictional characters in Bryce Dallas Howard's character's like novel. And then you have Sam Rockwell as like a real life secret agent who is like one of the leads. I mean, it's got a great cast. Sam Rockwell, like, they're all great. It's got a great cast. I love Matthew Vaughn. One thing I will point out, though, you know there's something going on with the cat, right? The cat is pretty prominent. She carries her cat around in this bag with, like, a window. It's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, like the cat, like Argylle's like a name of a pattern, right? And that's like the pattern of the carrying case for the cat.
Yes, that's the pattern on the carrying case. So you know something's up with this cat, because like it wouldn't be as prominent of a thing if there wasn't something going on with that, right?
Yeah, probably some kind of like a spy conceit, like it's got a chip in its brain or something, and then somehow that's interacting with Bryce Dallas Howard, and she's picking up these like prescient things that are really just like condensed AI information about like world events that is predictive of what's happening, or I don't know. It's gonna be something like that. The cat's a supercomputer, or something like that, you know? Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting movie. It looks fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
I mean, it's Matthew Vaughn, and it's a spy movie. While we wait for the potential next Kingsman movie, which may or may not ever come to be, this is like the next best thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next, we got a trailer for Leave the World Behind. This is interesting because it's Sam Esmail who is adapted this from a book and is directing it. And then
produced by the Obamas.
Yes, it is the first kind of its kind from the Obamas. They've done mostly like historical biopics or like motivational stuff like documentaries and things through their Netflix deal. And this is like an actual piece of fiction, which is like very different from what they've been handling. But it's the Sam Esmail thing is what excites me, because Mr. Robot was great. We talked about Mr. Robot a lot. We covered it. It was a great show, and that was Sam Esmail's like baby, you know?
Right, yeah.
And so anytime I see his name attached to something, I get a little excited. And
understandable.
And it looks good. I mean, it looks, I think I've seen similar plots before, but it excites me more because of who's involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it looks good. It's got a stellar cast. It looks like a top shelf drama, and I mean, looking at that cast and looking at Sam Esmail, who's directing it, it has potential to be something special.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we got a trailer for Thanksgiving. We'd seen trailers for this before, but this is like the most in-depth trailer we've had.
This is from Eli Roth, and this is based off a mock trailer he made for Grindhouse.
Yep. If those who don't remember, Grindhouse was like a collection of 2 movies put out by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. They each had one like movie. They were like Grindhouse, like we're talking about Roger Corman and Troma, something in kind of that.
It was
vein.
a homage to those to the trashy exploitation films of the 70s, and kind of like like that. You would go to a drive-through theater and you could watch them like back to back. Yeah, drive-in theater, and you could watch them like back to back.
Double feature,
yeah, double feature, and that was the conceit of like this project.
Yeah, and then they put a bunch of like fake trailers. They had Edgar Wright did one, Eli Roth did one. I think Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez both did several trailers as well. As
Rob Zombie did one.
Yeah, and so they made this whole like experience basically instead of like just a movie. And yeah, now you see years later, a decade or plus later.
It's funny because Robert Rodriguez, like the one he did with Machete, he already made into a film ages ago.
Oh, there's been like 3 Machete
and
films.
it's yeah.
He's made it into a franchise.
It's hilarious too because like the character also appears in Spy Kids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that was like the only one up until now. Like I guess like I don't know, like Eli Roth suddenly got it in him to like turn this into a real movie. I'm not sure what the impetus was like this long after the fact, but hey, it looks like a fun slasher film. Not gonna complain.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to see Edgar Wright's film though. Now, can we get Edgar Wright to do that, please? Thank you.
Next up, we have Silent Night, which is the long-awaited return of John Woo.
Yes.
I mean, he's done some other stuff. He did that one with Will Smith, I guess, where it was old Will Smith trying to kill young Will Smith.
Oh, that movie? I didn't realize that was John Woo. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe that was John Woo. And, but this one, Silent Night, looks like a action movie. It has that John Woo flair. It looks like it's borrowing a little bit from the recent trend of the John Wick style stuff as well. It seems to be in there, but it's definitely got that like really like hyper cinematic style of like John Woo.
Yeah,
slow-mo with doves.
His trademark style. So it's gonna be interesting to see John Woo, like his take on the John Wick genre, I guess. Now it's fair enough now to call it a genre. There's like so many movies.
It's got Joel Kinnaman in the lead.
Oh yeah, I love Joel Kinnaman.
I think he's a good action actor that really hasn't had enough of a break in that style.
Right.
Like he needs to be in like a John Wick movie or something. And
I was glad that he was like one of the people that James Gunn kept from the first Suicide Squad from the second movie.
Yeah.
Because he definitely did deserve that spotlight.
Yeah, and he's like, he was in a show called Altered Carbon on Netflix. It's a sci-fi show, very cyberpunk. And, he's great in that, and his action scenes are great in that, and he looks very physically imposing, even though I first got introduced to him, he was in a show called The Killing, and he just looked like really skinny.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching him in Altered Carbon, and he's kicking ass, and it's very believable. And, I've been wanting to see him do more action stuff, and so him working on a John Woo movie is, pretty exciting. Speaking of big action movies with a John Wick-esque flair, we got The Beekeeper, the next Jason Statham movie that's got a plot about phone scams.
Yeah.
It's basically this movie is like, should just be pitched as like, don't you fucking hate phone scams? And everyone's like, oh yeah. What if you could track down those people and fucking kill them?
I love it because like it's so silly. Like it's the opposite. Like Silent Night is obviously is going for like, being very serious, having serious subject matter. This is like, okay, what if Jason Statham was like a badass beekeeper and he was going after killing phone scammers, and then that leads to like an international government conspiracy or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
it's fun, dumb action.
Yeah. It's very silly.
Yeah.
It's like the polar opposite.
Yeah. And then last, we got the biggest masterpiece of all, the Tour de Grace,
oh god.
The winner at Cannes for every award, I assume. I have no idea if it got anything, but it should have gotten every award.
It did. It won everything. It won the Oscar this year.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah.
They haven't even like done the Oscars, but like it won. Yeah.
And that is Slotherhouse.
This is a typical slasher film, except the slasher
Sorority
is,
setting, yeah.
Except the slasher is a sloth. Yes, it's as stupid as it sounds, because they don't even, like, try to make the sloth look, like, threatening or, like, anything.
It just looks
like,
adorable.
it just looks like a sloth, and, like, it's improbably, like, pulling off all these feats that, like, it should not be able to do.
It's like human intelligence and speed way beyond a sloth.
and strength, apparently, too. And the thing about it, like, it's a sloth puppet, and it looks totally stupid every time it's on the screen, like, doing something.
It looks adorable, though. It looks so adorable.
Yeah, it does. But man, it just looks so silly. Like, they showed, like, some of the kills in the trailer, and it is so hard to, like, watch this puppet, like, doing these kills, because it's like, you can't keep a straight face through any of it.
That's the point, though, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is it for the trailers and for our On-Beat segment, and that leaves only full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we're going to be talking about, again, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. This is based on the Cyberpunk role-playing tabletop game by Mike Pondsmith, and of course, this was adapted into Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red. And before that game even came out, we got this announcement at one of CD Projekt Red's Nintendo Direct-esque events, where they mentioned that they were doing an anime with Studio Trigger, who is one of the most popular anime studios in Japan, one of the most recognizable.
They did Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill.
Yeah.
I love their style. I think, like, I've watched a fair bit of anime. I think, like, they're my favorite. Like, their style is just, like, my favorite. It's, like...
They're probably the most iconic
I
anime.
love the art style. I love, like, how kinetic they make the action. Like, everything is, like, supercharged.
They're like the platinum games of anime.
Yes. It's just, like, highly appealing to me.
Yeah.
Like, if I created something, I would want Trigger to make an anime out of it.
But CDPR got involved with Trigger, worked on this project. It's a true collaboration. They didn't just, like, hand it off to Trigger. Like, the story was created by Rafai Jaki, who is a writer at CD Projekt Red. He's also done some other stuff, too. He's got, like, a manga series now that just came out that sounds really interesting.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so this had, like, very heavy involvement by CD Projekt Red.
Oh, yeah. It was basically written by CD Projekt Red and then adapted from that by Studio Trigger.
Kind of sucks because, like, I understand why Cyberpunk, the game, why it looks like it does. But man, would the game be awesome if it had this art style? It's like, yeah, it would be awesome if there was, like, an anime, like, version of the game. Because I love the art style so much here.
Yeah, one of the things I said about this way back when I first watched it that is still so impressive is, like, if you've spent a lot of time in Night City in Cyberpunk, if you've played that game and you spent a lot of time in Night City, it really, I mean, the show takes place in Night City too, and it really feels like it. Like, there are moments where there's, like, a scene and you're like, oh, I know exactly where they are. Like, they're outside this one shop right here, and that's right around the corner from where I had this gunfight over here. It's like, you know exactly where the characters are whenever they're somewhere. Like, you're
that's
like,
really
okay,
cool.
I know where they are. I know what kind of neighborhood they're in. I kind of know what these characters are going to be like around this area. Like, it's just, it really feels like a lived-in world. I think that's one of the best accomplishments of the game, is that the world, the city is so, like, real. You know, maybe not necessarily as far as, like, interactions go, because some people have complained about that, but in the sense of, like, design, it really feels like a real living city that, you know, that you're in.
Right. It's definitely very well thought out.
Yeah, and the way that carries over into the anime is fantastic, and that includes, like, music, for example. Almost all the music in this, besides, like, the opening and ending song, are songs that are in the Cyberpunk game. So, like, if you've played a bunch of Cyberpunk and then watch this anime, you're like, oh, all these musical cues and things come up. These are things you've heard in the game. So, like, again, it just cements it in that world. It really does such a good job of that But I think story-wise, like, an emotion and just the fact that they chose to do this as an anime, like, it leads so perfectly for it, because Cyberpunk is a genre, not like the franchise, but just as a genre, is kind of about hopelessness. It's like the little guy against the system, but there's not like, and the little guy will win. It's like, no, the little guy's going to lose. That's what Cyberpunk's all about. You know, it's like, you're the little guy, you're fighting against the system, but you're not going to beat the system. You know, you're going to lose. It's just a matter of how you lose, and if you end up making a name for yourself, if you become a legend before you lose. And that's a big part of the game, and it's a big part of this anime as well. When it starts getting into all of just oh man, it's kind of depressing when it starts establishing the world, like the way the health insurance systems work and stuff. It's just so close. We're so close to that, you know?
It's very nihilistic.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah.
It's a nihilistic commentary on what's actually happening in some places, like the U.S.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely like social commentary. But yeah, like the thing about like Cyberpunk Edgerunners here is like, yeah, it's nihilistic. Terrible things happen throughout, and that there's not really any happy ending.
That's what Cyberpunk should be, as far as like the entire genre, not just like the franchise, you know?
Right.
That's kind of what it's about. It's about like the losing against the big guy, you know? The game is rigged, and there's really not much you can do. You can kind of like maybe pull off and survive, but you're not going to win. And that's kind of like a big part of what's going on in the story here, is we have this character, David, who is, you just see through the entire first episode, his life is not great, and it just gets progressively worse.
He's a poor kid, you know, being taken care of by a single mother who's doing her best to provide just enough to keep him in this nice school, in the hopes that, you know, graduating from this, you know, elite school is going to provide him with the means to get a job at one of like the largest corporations and rise up the ranks. And
yeah,
you know,
but obviously that's not working.
No,
it's not working for him. He's struggling. He's making choices that get him in disputes with his mom, because he's trying to be more realistic than his mom is being about the situation, but he's making mistakes in doing that, and he's only sticking with it because it's his mom's dream for him, but he kind of knows it's not going anywhere.
But yeah, and he also knows like that's not his dream. He doesn't want to be a corpo, really.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, that's not the goal for him. He's doing it for her.
Yeah, and then she dies.
Yes. And
and
again,
it's
like,
horrible. It's so horrible.
And you can kind of feel it, like, if you're poor in this country, then like this would be familiar to you, because like, and again, like, this is exaggerated. I mean, this specific scenario wouldn't happen, but like, the point is like the emergency services arrive just in time to save her, but they scan her, find out she doesn't have insurance or whatever, and because of that, they just leave her there. Yeah. And he has to take her to, you know, like an underground doctor or whatever, who ends up not being able to save her. And it's kind of like, in the way I say like that's like, should be familiar if you're poor, is because it seems like if you're poor, you do get like a different level of healthcare in this country than people who have money and can pay for it. You get, I do believe if you're poor, if you're on like, you know, public health insurance or whatever, you know, like, you don't have means, you get like the baseline level of care.
Yeah.
And that's it. Anything beyond that, like, they're unwilling to do for you.
That's exaggerated here, for example, and like, he can't visit his mom after she gets out of surgery. He's told that she's fine though, but she has complications, but they don't really do anything to help. And so she dies. And the implication is that if she had more money, even at this lower care facility that she's at, if they had more money, if she had a better plan, they would have acted faster and maybe have been able to save her. And even the doctor's like, well, I mean, what can you expect with the cheap plan?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Just like, oh well.
Yeah,
you know?
oh well.
And that's what the reality is in this world. And, it leaves David with nothing. Cause his mom's gone. He's no longer gonna go after her dream. And she's basically all he had. And now he has nothing. And all it takes is one of his snot-nosed rich classmates to say,
a person
talk
who's
some
been
shit
antagonizing him.
Yeah, to talk shit about his mom after she died, that really sets him off and basically makes him make a rash decision that sets everything into motion. We should say that the story starts out with a scene of what he uses, which is, we see an example of cyberpsychosis.
Because of, like, her job,
mm-hmm.
She came into possession of a piece of military-grade cyberware. I guess it's called that. I guess I should explain for people unfamiliar with Cyberpunk. One of the main conceits is that this is the future and people regularly enhance their bodies with cybernetic parts, fusing human and machine. And that's just like a normal thing. And so what David comes into possession is this military-grade equipment that's, like, not supposed to be, disseminated for civilian use.
I can never remember the name of it. You can get those things in the game, too, but they're Savenistan or something like that, or...
Oh, yeah.
It's got a weird name. But anyways, yeah, so he's got this... We see the beginning of the whole show starts off with an example of cyberpsychosis, which is basically the idea of if somebody's got too much cyberware, it can start to, like, fuck with your mind. And
so if they got too much, if they
crazy.
If they overuse it, it could mess up your head and drive you crazy.
We see an example of a military guy who has this implant in him, and
Devistan, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah.
And he uses it and is just murdering tons of police officers until he's eventually put down by Militech. One of the big corporations. It's Arasaka and Militech are the two super big corporations in the city. And Militech takes him out, and his implant goes missing because in order to try to put her son through this education system at Arasaka, his mom, who's
stealing implants.
Yeah, she's been stealing implants from dead bodies and selling them.
Yeah, that's how she's been coming up with the money to put him through school, even despite the fact that she's working a really low-wage job, Yeah.
So after she dies, David is trying to sell this piece of gear, but it's hot, so it's hard to sell. And at the end, after being, his mom being insulted by this classmate of his and him just being completely fed up, he's breaking into his own apartment because he's been locked out and everything. It's a really bad situation. He just says, fuck it, goes to a Ripper dock and has it put inside of him just to fucking kick this guy's ass. Because he just doesn't care anymore. He's got nothing else.
Right, yeah, exactly. He doesn't care about being at that school anymore or doing that. He just wants to kick this, this asshole's ass. It's that's the goal. That's the only goal at this point.
Yeah, so he does that, and then he's continuing on with his regular life, and then he ends up finding a thief who uses his cyberware to stop her from stealing a chip that's in his head from his school, and ends up befriending her and starting a business partnership with her.
Yeah. And then for the sake of brevity, this leads to David coming face to face with the people his mom had been doing business with the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a group of Edgerunners, which is just another kind of term for cyberpunk. They're kind of like mercenaries. They work for fixers, and fixers in the city, in the game, it's how you get your quests through fixers. And in this, there's a fixer named Faraday, and he's setting up quests for this team of Edgerunners, and David ends up joining this team. And it's kind of found family. And
it's found family, because when David learns about this world and these he is eager to join them and become an Edgerunner himself.
Mm-hmm.
He immediately makes this his goal in life to be one of them.
Yeah. But what ends up happening is that because this is a world of huge wealth disparity and corporate greed, Edgerunners are struggling to get by. It's life and death. David ends up having to get his hands dirty on several occasions, and the people he's with are under constant threat threat of things like cyberpsychosis.
Yes.
And you start to see the effect that this has as like people in the group succumb to it, or like
this is, yeah.
A character gets killed by a cyber psycho because he's confronting the character because he's pissing.
Yes. And he's just like killed like in an instant, like completely unexpectedly.
Yeah.
You learn pretty quick that this is not a path you take if you want to live a long and fruitful life.
Yeah.
This is possibly the most dangerous profession you can have in this world. Because, by the end of the series, pretty much everybody is dead. Except for Lucy.
Lucy and maybe Falco. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's true. We don't actually see Falco die. He's injured, for sure. He's pretty badly injured. But yeah, we actually don't get confirmation of that. That's fair.
Yeah. So like we said, everybody dies, including David, by the end. But it's just such an emotional story. And it carries through. And like I said, the way it uses music, the way it uses the setting, the way it uses like desperation at being poor and how you survive in a world like this to like amplify the emotion and to amplify to make those moments between characters likable. Like how many of these characters that start off as like just these very dangerous thugs that David encounters and how like likable they make those characters because they're in this struggle together. And so like the kind of bonds that are formed in that fire are like much stronger, you know? So there's like all these very memorable characters that he's associating with, that he's involved with, and you're just basically seeing them fall off and die as the story progresses. But the real story is between David and Lucy. Lucy, the girl who he encountered that got him involved in all of this.
Yeah.
And David, the two of them.
It definitely becomes a love story, between these two characters. That's the center of it.
Yeah. And it quickly becomes apparent, like before the end, with David dying and everything, you kind of know that, like, David only cares about this group, and he only cares about Lucy, and he made a promise that he was going to take her to the moon because that's her dream.
Yes.
And so David doesn't really have a dream of his own so much. He wants to hold up other people's dreams, and particularly Lucy's.
Yes.
And in doing that, it leads to his tragic end, in which kind of all the elements of the story start to come together. Arasaka realizing that he's got that implant, knowing that he's somehow able to handle it better than a lot of other people can, and like he's not losing his mind immediately like most people would, apparently. And they want to test out another military weapon using him, and so there's betrayals going on. The fixer, Faraday, who, by the way, did you watch this in English or Japanese?
Giancarlo Esposito?
Yeah, in the English, it's Giancarlo Esposito, Gus Fring himself.
Yes, that voice is unmistakable. You can't mistake that for anybody else.
But yeah, like, so Faraday is this fixer. He betrays them. A member of their group betrays them.
Well, Faraday's a character who's like, he's slimy. He has designs on rising to the top of the corporal ladder to be one of the kings of this world, know. And he's using these Edgerunners. He's just using them to do his dirty work. He doesn't he doesn't care about these people, and he's fully willing to, cast them aside or kill them as soon as they become an issue or a liability for him.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what sets everything off into the end game of this with, everything kind of going wrong. And it also brings in a famous character who's in the game, but he's also in the lore for the original game, Atom Smasher, who kind of becomes the central threat antagonist. Like, he's not the main antagonist. That would be Faraday or just Arasaka as a whole. But Atom Smasher becomes like the main boss person, so to speak.
Unfortunately, I was expecting some epic fight. David doesn't actually put up much of a fight against Atom Smasher. He pretty much overpowers him pretty handily.
Here's a reason for you to now play Cyberpunk 2077. You can fight Atom Smasher.
Yeah.
A lot of people played Cyberpunk 2077, watched the anime, and then went right back to the game just to kill Atom Smasher.
Yeah, because I guess Atom Smasher is just they're not bluffing. He is that powerful. even like David like fully kitted out with like the Sandevistan and like the military mech weapon exoskeleton, you know, it still can't like even like put a scratch on Atom Smasher, which is crazy.
The most he can do is like impress him a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end, as Atom Smasher says, you'd make an interesting construct, which is, if you've played the game, that's what Keanu Reeves' character in the game is. He's a construct. Like, he died, and now he's like in a chip. And he's like, that's what he means when he said you'd make an interesting construct. As he's talking about like turning David into basically like an AI or something. But David rejects it. And that's when he dies, and we just get our final scene with Lucy kind of envisioning, she gets to the moon, and she envisions herself with David on the moon.
Yeah.
And that's how the story ends so tragically, and it's, yeah. So, what did you think of this overall?
I thought it was excellent. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's a very emotional series. Like, I get all teary just thinking about it. And it's funny because, like, there's a meme about how people would play Cyberpunk and they'd be listening to some of the songs and stuff. Like, the one kind of key song in the anime is the song, I Really Want to Stay at Your House or at Your Place, which is the one that kind of, it's like David and Lucy's song that plays all the time with them. And like it shows like there's a meme going around where it's all like, you know, before watching Edgerunners, and it's all like, you know, a guy cruising around Night City. It's like gameplay footage, and you see like in the corner of the screen, it's that like head bobbing cat, like just just kind of grooving out to the song, and as the song's playing. And then it's like after watching Edgerunners, and it shows like all these people like crying and stuff as they're driving around Edgerunners and like freaking out and stuff. And it's like it's like that's the effect it has on you, and it makes it fit into the world. It's also very cool if you watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners and you play Cyberpunk 2077. They put in a lot of content connected to the anime after the anime came out into the game. Like retroactively, they added stuff in. Like you can get David's jacket. You can see like little log files that reference things within the story of the anime. As you know, it's like basically Edgerunners takes place like maybe I think like a year before Cyberpunk 2077. So they could have called it like Cyberpunk 2076, I guess, instead of Edgerunners. But it all kind of ties together, and it all feels like it's part of the same breathing world. And that's, I think, more than anything, what made me like absolutely adore this anime is like, I think it's really emotional and good and strong on its own, but just how much it connects into the world, and how much when you've played Cyberpunk and you feel like this is a story of somebody who you could have like passed by on the subway kind of thing, you know? It just makes it so much stronger. And I think it's the kind of like cross medium synergy when you have like games and movies and things that all take place within the same universe, you know? This is the kind of thing like at its peak, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is like the core example of why doing that is good for like a storytelling purpose. So I'm glad you finally got to see it and watch it. And now every time you hear that song, you'll be re-traumatized.
Yeah, exactly. so thank you for that.
You're welcome for the trauma. But yeah, that's Cyberpunk Edgerunners. If you have not watched it and we didn't spoil it enough for you already, go check that out on Netflix. You can watch it in Japanese or in English. English, like I said, has Giancarlo Esposito as a character in it. The Japanese dub is excellent as well. This is one of the few where I've watched both. I usually just stick to Japanese for anime, but the English dub is actually really good too.
The English dub is fantastic. I didn't have any problems. I didn't watch it in Japanese, obviously, so I can't make comparisons, but like there was like no point where I just thought like it never sounded bad. I mean, it was top notch.
The one issue I would have with the English dub, and this is the case with like pretty much all English dubs or any English language cartoon for the most part, is that they typically record all the audio separately. The actors aren't with each other.
Oh yeah.
In Japan, they record them together.
Oh, interesting.
So they have the cast together, and so when characters are reacting off of each other, it feels a lot more natural in Japanese than it does in English.
Natural.
Because they're in the same room.
It's probably, I think, like, it's probably more practical to do it separate sessions, like, because, like, people's schedules and stuff.
And, people that do a lot of voice acting, they just still have their own studio in their house, so they can literally do it over the phone,
Right, yeah.
And, but it's, that's kind of like an issue I have with English dubs in general. There's points where it just sounds a little unnatural because the characters aren't actually talking to each other, but like in Japanese, the way they record that, they are talking to each other. So it kind of feels a little bit more natural in those moments.
Right.
But that's, like I said, that's a case with like every English voiceover production pretty much. And, I think this is an incredible dub considering, like, taking that out of the equation, which is something that affects all English dubs. It's a very good dub. Yeah. So, what was the most heartbreaking moment for you in Edgerunners?
Oh, geez. So much, like, everybody dying. Like, every time a member of the crew bit it was, like, heartbreaking. I think, like, the one that, was, like, the one guy there.
Which one? Maine or?
Yeah, Maine. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, like Maine was like especially like heartbreaking because like you just like saw like he was succumbing to psychosis.
Yeah, he killed his own lover.
Yeah, that was rough. Like, and that was. And again, that was like part of like the theme of the film saying, like this is kind of pointing out like, this is like the trajectory David is heading in.
Mm-hmm.
Especially hit hard because like Maine at that point had become like David's mentor. And David, like, really, like, turned to him for, like, a lot of, like, advice and stuff at that point. So, like...
Yeah, he'd become, like, a big brother to him.
Yeah, and so, like, David losing Maine, again, was, like, another huge blow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think one of the ones I hear a lot of people mention is Rebecca, and she was smashed by Adam Smasher.
Yeah.
A lot of people really liked her.
Yeah, her character was good. Again, you can make an argument for all of them, pretty much.
Yeah. For me, I think the scene and it wasn't like a death scene, but it was like you knew where everything was going, and it was kind of like almost the opposite of a death scene, but it was so sad because you knew it wasn't working out, was the scene where Lucy finally got to David when he was like running away from Adam Smasher.
Yeah.
And like she grabs his face, and you see like they do an effect when someone's going through cyberpsychosis where they're like their body like splits apart kind of, like into different images. It's like there's after images like all over the place of their eyes and their face. And he's completely flipping out, and she grabs his face and it all kind of settles in, and then she kisses him and his eyes settle in. And it's like, okay, he has a moment of clarity now. And that was like a really like emotional scene for me just because it's short. This is goodbye basically.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, great series. Highly recommend it. Check it out. I really hope they do more. I hope when they do Cyberpunk 2 that they do something else. There are some people wanting them to do like a direct sequel, and I'm like, no. Like this story's done.
Yeah, this story's done. Yeah. We don't have to do a sequel to the story. Like,
yeah. Just let Lucy be on the moon. Leave her alone.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let Lucy ever ending.
Yeah. But I really hope they do something akin to this when they put out maybe the next Cyberpunk game where they do another like anime. I don't know. Maybe with Trigger, maybe with somebody else. Completely different plot, different characters, but just I love the setting, and they really did just a fantastic job through and through with Edgerunners.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is it for this week. Thank you everybody for listening. Next week, we are going to be covering Paranoia Agent. This is another old anime, a much older anime. Cyberpunk Edgerunners came out like last year or the year before. Paranoia Agent came out like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't 90s. It was like early 2000s, I think.
Right? Yeah.
So like maybe 20 years
like
ago.
90s. But yeah.
But the reason we are doing Paranoia Agent is because we are coming up on Satoshi Kon's birthday. Satoshi Kon is the creator of Paranoia Agent. He also did Perfect Blue, Tokyo Godfathers, a bunch of like really good anime movies. He was a master of his craft. Probably my favorite anime director. I liked him more than Hayao Miyazaki, He's commonly referred to as like the Hitchcock of anime, basically. He's just a really brilliant director, and he unfortunately passed away too young in his early 50s, I believe. He would be be 60 years old at the time that we will be covering Paranoia Agent. It would be his 60th birthday if he was still alive. And I thought, hey, 60 is a big landmark birthday. Satoshi Kon is my favorite anime director, and I wanted to honor him. So what we're going to do is we're watching Paranoia Agent, which is the one series he did. He did a bunch of movies, but the one series that he created was Paranoia Agent. And so we'll be covering that. You can get that on Crunchyroll and Funimation, so either one of those. You can also get like a free trial for either one of those to watch it if you need to, but that is how you can watch it, and I highly recommend you guys watch along with us. It's been ages for me. I barely remember the series at all. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at VoxelHero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website, open up the container story for any of our podcast episodes, go to the last paragraph, you'll find all of the relevant links to all of our social media, everything else that you need, our RSS feed, SoundCloud page, all of that's there, so you can check that out. You can also subscribe to this podcast through any podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is also available on our YouTube channel, along with other content we've done in the past. So check that out. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.